Hi everyone, welcome to the Fashion Revolution podcast hosted by Love Thrift. My name is Angela. Today we have a really cool episode for you guys. It's the first interview that we have done on the show. We are interviewing a local reseller here named Weaver in Southern Colorado. He resells vintage men's clothing. In this show, we talk about everything from hip-hop fashion and culture to how up-and-coming styles go from just like normal everyday people to the mainstream retailers. It's going to be a lot of fun. I hope you enjoy it. Again, if you're interested in learning more about Weaver or his products, you can find him on Instagram at Poncho's Corner Store, and you can always find us on Instagram at Love Thrift USA. Thanks again for watching, guys. Enjoy the show. I guess, let's see, so what you were saying about hip-hop and like skate culture, that I think is really interesting, because that in particular, I feel is kind of where, like you said, like people kind of get their style. Like, you see people like skating on the streets, kind of, and it's like, oh, hey, that's like really cool.
Yeah.
And then you see people like in fashion magazines, like that's really cool. But a lot of the time, the fashion magazines get their influence from.
For sure, exactly. Actually, very recently, there was a whole bunch of stuff going on about A$AP Rocky. Did a collaboration with Under Armour, of all people, and made a shoe.
A$AP Rocky?
Like the musician, he's a rapper. Okay. Very well known. And he did a collaboration with Under Armour, and they made a shoe. And when it came out, the skate community was like up in arms, because they basically replicated like a really famous skate shoe. It's called the Osiris D3, like really fat, like early 2000s when everyone was wearing super fat, puffy shoes. And he basically made that shoe, but didn't give proper credit.
Okay.
So there's been a bunch of stuff going on with that. But yeah, that's like a literal example just recently.
When did that happen?
Like within the last 6 months.
Oh, really?
Even earlier than that, probably the last 4 or 5.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And
that was released, where was the show released?
I don't know. I think it was just like a special edition kind of thing, like, you know, they always do with sneakers. And people were hyped on it, and it's a cool shoe. But it's just one of those things where now there are definitely so many skaters around the world that it's such an iconic shoe. As soon as everybody saw it, if you knew what the original was, you were like, oh, okay, like that's a little too close.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
So everybody kind of had like an almost adverse reaction?
Yeah, exactly. Like, I like the shoe, I'd wear the shoe, but I would never get it just because he didn't pay his dues, I guess, in a way. And I like A$AP Rocky too. But that's one example. Another is there's definitely mixed feelings. I think in the skate community about like Thrasher, and how popular Thrasher is just as a brand now.
Okay.
And like lots of people wearing like Thrasher hoodies, Thrasher t-shirts that don't necessarily skate, which is cool because it's spreading the culture.
But it's kind of gypping the community because you don't really understand anything.
Yeah, in a way, I think there's definitely people that take it like that. I personally think it's cool because it's just like you're spreading it, you know? More people are seeing it if you're wearing it.
Yeah. How do you think like hip-hop culture ties into that? Because like you're a hip-hop artist, so you probably see a lot of like the good and bad of the fashion industry playing into that.
For sure. Fashion and hip-hop obviously kind of, you know, they've been like weaving together ever since like the beginning of hip-hop. And it definitely drives a lot of like trends, I feel like.
Okay.
Like, I actually saw a video the other day of a rapper, like, globally known, talking about how rappers need to stop wearing Gucci. He was like, alright, we're going to stop wearing Gucci because there's always been this relationship of hip-hop and fashion, and rappers talking about brands, but not really being supported by the brand, and the brand not necessarily even maybe wanting them to wear it.
Okay.
But they're kind of, like, on their own being like, yeah, this is what's tight. But not really receiving anything in return, which I think is really interesting. And it's actually a really good documentary about Polo Ralph Lauren and like hip hop and like the history of it.
Really?
On YouTube somewhere, and that kind of breaks it down really well and just describes how like the intentions of the designer might not
like match the wearer.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like the wearer takes it and makes it their own thing, and it might not have matched with the intentions of the design.
Okay.
And then now it's like something completely different, which I think is beautiful.
I think that's interesting. Yeah, that's a really interesting.
It's like alchemy.
Yeah, for real. Because I mean, you would think about it like the designer is almost like an artist. Like you're a hip hop artist, and so you would say like, I want my music to be interpreted the way that you see it, and then like, but a fashion designer is like, no, I want it to stay rigid in the way that I design it, and that's kind of been an issue in hip hop. That's really interesting.
I think that with any sort of creation, any sort of art, as soon as you make it and like release it to the world, it's like no longer yours.
Yeah, for real.
It's open to interpretation, or it's also open to like modification.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, in tons of different ways. But yeah, I definitely see. Like we're in this whole like hype beast era where it's more about like the hype of something than I think anything else. Maybe even above like what you might really think is cool.
Right.
That might even trump that. And something that's definitely interesting about like the men's vintage side of things, especially like 80s, 90s kind of stuff that I'm into, is that there's brands that are obviously really popular, but not every product from that brand is going to like be a big seller. So it's like, for example, if you find like a Tommy Hilfiger polo with like a really little small flag on it, someone's not going to want that as much as something that says, boom, Tommy Hilfiger, because they like, exactly, they want you to know that this is what I'm wearing.
That's true. Yeah. Why do you think that is? I mean, aside from like the visual effect of it.
I think it's like, I don't know, probably some sort of like a status thing. You know, if something is deemed like cool by the culture, and then you can like acquire it and then like wear it, then maybe in a way like it involves you in the culture and you feel like a part of that.
It's like an inclusion kind of thing.
Yeah, in a sense. And I'm not necessarily, I enjoy all the stuff that I find, and I like it.
Yeah.
And I would potentially wear it, but I don't really keep a lot of that stuff for myself necessarily.
Yeah. Why do you think that is?
I think I understand, like from a business point of view, I understand that this is what people want.
Right.
But that's not what I want. I don't know, I'm always trying to be like forward thinking, and I've always just kind of done my own thing and dressed my own way, and I'll add in some of those brands and some of those items like here and there. But I think it's just because I realize it's a really interesting balance, because obviously like I'm doing this for a living, but at the same time I realize it's kind of like a smoke screen. Like it's not that, like it doesn't really mean anything, you know?
Right. Yeah.
This doesn't actually give you like any sort of status.
Right. Exactly. It's more of like what you do with it, what you understand about it, and how you can kind of like help other people.
Yeah, I think it's easy to fall into like, using brand names or items or whatever it is to cover up something,
Right, whatever.
And that's not always the case by any means. There's people that definitely just appreciate it for what it is, and they like it aesthetically, and I fall into that category for sure. There's certain things where like I get something really cool, and it's like, you wear it and you do feel good. You're like, there is like something empowering.
It's more of like, as opposed to like, I like it because of the brand. It's more of, I like it because it's like my personality.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like it complements like your flavor, if you will, your style, as opposed to that's what it is. And you're under that.
I think you said something really interesting that I kind of wanted to go back to. You mentioned like fashion is almost maybe like some way to include yourself in some sort of group, but also like a status symbol. You mentioned how much of a role do you think social media has played into that as of lately, and how do you think that's going to affect fashion in the future?
Definitely a huge role.
Yeah.
Because I think it just gives even more ways and even more avenues for people to establish what it is that's cool, or what it is that's like in style.
Like a marker on the
and because obviously Instagram is all visual.
Right.
It's
super visual.
Yeah, like going back to what I just said about like hip hop and rappers talking about brands and songs, like it's different for you to hear it all the time than for you to see it. Once you're hearing it and seeing it, and you're just exposed to it in all ways. It's just pushing everything forward, which I think is cool. Yeah. And I mean, Instagram is one of the platforms I sell on. Like I sell directly off Instagram to a lot of people.
Message you
for sure. And I think that's new. Like that's newer, and I think that's gonna expand somehow. I don't know how necessarily, but it's a good platform for just putting things out there for people to enjoy and appreciate, and even just for promotional purposes.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also a great way just to sell directly. Like there's
Yeah.
two sides. There's people that don't necessarily sell directly off their page,
Mm-hmm.
but they'll post things that they have and they'll direct you elsewhere
Right.
to buy it. Whereas my approach for my Instagram was from the get-go was like, I want this to be like my storefront.
Mm-hmm.
So I want everything to like be cohesive, and
Yeah.
you can just look through and be like, all right.
That's smart. And then I guess what gave you the idea to start selling off Instagram? Did you hear that other people were selling off of it?
I think I kind of saw people doing it in a way, not the way that I was doing it, or not the way that I've ended up doing it.
Right.
But yeah, I just saw people that were doing it in some capacity or another, and was like, oh, like, you know,
this might work.
Yeah. And it's like there's so many eyes. You know, it's like
there really is.
You're an eBay user, so you know it's like you could list something on eBay that you think is really cool, and then you look like a month later and it's got like 10 views.
And you're shocked. You're like, I thought this was going to get
and you're like, that many people have watched it? So it's like, if you have, like 2,000 followers, and say you average like 200 people, 250 people looking at your story every day, you put something on there, within a day, within 24 hours before it's even gone, you got 200 people that have looked at it.
Yeah, and that's quite a difference compared to eBay, where you may be getting like 20 views, and at the same time, you're competing with other people who might have the same exact product at a similar or lower price. It's kind of like your own little like condensed thing. For sure.
And I just think it allows more freedom for how you want to present things.
Right.
There's so many different ways to do it. Like I'm an artist kind of first and foremost, like a musician, but also like a visual artist, and I just appreciate aesthetics. And so when I started selling off my Instagram, I knew that I wanted it to be a certain way, and I've just stuck to that.
Very unique. Not unique, but maybe uniform is.
For sure, very uniform. Like the way I think about it is that if I'm going to be selling strictly online, this is my storefront. It's like you go into a shop, it makes you feel good as a customer when you see, an owner or an employee like sweeping the floor or like, tidying things up. So it's like, I want to make this as clean as possible so that when you go to my page, you're like, oh wow. And I, even more than just potential buyers, like I want other resellers to look at it and be like, oh, like, this is sick. Yeah. But at the same time, I have friends that will just take a picture like right out of the cart. They'll just take whatever it is that they find. They're finding crazy stuff, take pictures out of the cart, and they sell stuff like crazy. Really? Like no more or no less than I do. Huh. So it's like there's so many different ways to do it.
That's so interesting. So you kind of can just bring your own personal
style into it. Yeah, for sure. And I've seen, since I started doing it heavy, I've seen a lot of different people doing it in a lot of different ways.
Why do you think, I guess, every different way drives results? Regardless of how detailed you are, because you said somebody's taking pictures of arts.
See, that's my friend Noah, Jim Synonym, and here in Colorado Springs as well. And he is looking. It's interesting how you can have like multiple individuals within like the same niche that are looking for different things.
Right. Yeah.
And so there's things that he'll throw back that I'll take, and like vice versa. Mm-hmm. But part of it for him, I think, and for other people that do this as well, is that they're looking for items that are like such a high quality,
like really
high quality that it's just like people are gonna jump on it as soon as they see it.
Right.
It doesn't necessarily have to be like taken home and like set up on a mannequin or like laid out and displayed beautifully. It's just like the quality of the product, it speaks for itself, and it works in that way. Whereas for me, it's like I try and obviously get high quality items whenever I can, but as a business and to fund my life and everything that I do. Yeah. There's a lot of like filler items, if you will.
Yeah, for sure. Because it's cash flow at the end of the day.
Yeah. So it's like if I know that I can pick something up that I'll make $15, $20 off of, like I'm gonna pick it up.
And then you do that 2 or 3 times a day, and it's like it's not really a $15 or $20 item.
Exactly. So it's like if I was just taking a picture of that in my cart,
probably
wouldn't.
Right. Yeah. But I've looked at some of the stuff on your page, and what I thought was really cool was that you're not just maybe going for like vintage stuff or brand name stuff, but you're also looking at style, which I thought was really interesting because, like you mentioned, like brand is put on such a high pedestal, but at the same time, I think maybe this might be like style making a comeback because like brand might not be as important in the future. Maybe
it might not be on that pedestal.
Right.
Yeah, I totally agree, and that part of that just comes from I don't know.
You think you're just...
it's definitely true. You're definitely right. I was thinking about that today. yeah, I think you're right. I think that shift is coming.
Yeah.
And I think whether I'm aware of it or not, I'm maybe helping in some way or another to move that along.
Yeah.
Because it's like you said, it's less about like this is hot, like this is a crazy item that has this brand name, and more about like I just think this looks cool.
Yeah.
Or like when I see something, like I think about things in like outfits all the time.
Right.
So I see something, I'm like, oh, like this is how I put this with this. I've had friends tell me before, like I had a friend tell me, she was like, I don't think you realize that like putting together like an outfit or outfits in the way that you do, like not everybody has that tendency. You know, we all have different skill sets.
It's a really fine-tuned skill.
So the one thing that I liked about like being in person and like doing a pop-up event was that somebody might be looking at something that they like and they're interested in, but maybe in their head they're like, I really like this, but I don't know what I'm going to wear it with.
Right.
Whereas I could be like, oh, you can wear it with this, or you can wear it like this.
You kind of show them the different ways.
Yeah, exactly. There's so many different options.
Aside from, I guess, hip-hop, what made you get into reselling? Did you just have a big passion for...
Yeah, I used to, like, along with my music, all my merchandise used to be, I had a brand called Space Camp.
Okay.
And so, like, instead of, like, Weaver merch, I just have, like, all the Space Camp merch.
Okay.
And so I have a background in the graphic design, and so I was just designing all my own stuff and selling it like that. And that's kind of how I built, like, my customer base in Lawrence that I ended up then later selling vintage stuff to, was through that. But yeah, like I said, when I was in California, it was just kind of out of convenience more than anything. I've always bought, like, thrifted stuff for myself. I've never been the type of person to, like, buy something full price.
Yeah.
And I've always been into vintage stuff. And so I just figured that, you know, like I said, we have different skill sets. And if I realize that I have an eye for things that I think are cool and maybe other people think are cool as well, then it's like, I could use this to my advantage.
Yeah. Somebody else is going to have similar or exact same taste.
Hopefully, for sure.
Okay, so you were thrifting in LA, which I think is interesting. I'm from Orange County originally, and so just from living there, I know there's a lot of people in that whole region. Yeah. So I'm curious what, I guess, like volume differences you saw in the amount of clothing that was available for resale there versus here.
I didn't go to the Ben's locations there.
Okay. Do they have Ben's there?
Yeah.
They do?
Sure, most big cities.
Okay.
I don't know, you know, to be honest, like, where I was more like the South Bay area, like Manhattan Beach, like Redondo Beach, like that whole area. And there was a lot of good stuff. I didn't necessarily see anybody when I was out that I could tell was like probably selling the same type of stuff as me.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
But there's always probably competition.
For sure. Yeah. For sure.
Yeah. Would you say there's more or less thrift stores there? Probably a lot more because
there's a lot. Like just because of the volume of people.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. There's definitely a lot.
Would you say you find different styles out there than out here?
A little bit. I mean, here you definitely get more like winter stuff. Obviously.
Yeah.
A lot of like snow stuff.
Yeah.
Like ski inspired stuff and like sporty, like outdoorsy stuff.
Mm-hmm. Do you see like a lot of higher fashion labels? Like I guess I don't know. Like
yeah, a little bit for sure. Yeah, because of the demographic. Like I don't know if you have a demographic that's making a bunch of money and then they're buying things for their kids. Like a lot of them are probably going to buy nice stuff and then that ends up getting donated and so on and so forth. So yeah, I mean I did definitely see some like high end stuff there. I can't say for sure if there was like a higher volume of it there than here.
Yeah.
But
there's still, I'm sure, like a lot.
Yeah.
Like pounds and pounds and pounds of it.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I want to be respectful of your time, but I do want to make sure that people can find a way to like contact you if they wanted to or shop your store. So if you want to maybe share like your Instagram name or if you have like a website that people can follow.
Yeah, Instagram is the best way. Just at Poncho's Corner Store. Okay. Poncho is Pancho.
And that's the best way to buy your stuff.
For sure.
If they want to shop your store.
Yeah, I have my my eBay store link in my bio on there, so you can always go that route as well. But a lot of people just end up buying directly off the page.
Cool. Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate you doing this.
Of course, thank you.
Really nice of you to take the time. I know you're super busy. I'll shake your hand and then I'll shut off the video.